Hi, so in this video, we're going to take you through the framework that we use here at Ben White Physiotherapy on how we take somebody from their injury all the way up to wherever they want to be, whether that's competing at the highest level in their chosen sport, whether it's going out for a leisurely kayak with their husband, or picking up their grandchildren, or cooking a big meal for Thanksgiving or any holiday. And so we break it down into a couple different phases. And I use the pyramid because everybody starts at the bottom when they get injured. So this is when you first get hurt. So maybe that's a couple days ago, maybe that's a couple weeks ago, maybe that was years ago. But everybody who gets hurt starts at the bottom of the pyramid. Now, some of the key things that we need to do here is start to address some of the symptoms, so the pain, the swelling, the inflammation, and start educating on what we can do safely and how to get to the next step. And really the big thing with being injured is we can't do anything. We can't participate in our activities. Most people don't stay here very long. They get to this next phase pretty quick, and that's called the roller coaster. We're just gonna say RC for roller coaster. And this is where people are pretty inconsistent in their progress due to frequent setbacks. So this is kind of oftentimes the most disheartening phase because people start to feel really, really good, and then all of a sudden they are going back down the roller coaster and start to get more and more hurt, and then they start to get a little bit better and back down. And that is typical. It's typical as we're rehabbing really anything. We have really good days, we start to push things, and we start to go back down. As we're getting out of that roller coaster phase, we want to see more good days and less bad days. And when we start to do that, we start to address the core problems that are keeping you there versus just the symptoms. So we're no longer just treating pain, just treating inflammation, we're treating why you're developing that pain, which is a big difference. Most people in any kind of rehab with any kind of musculoskeletal issue, this is where they stop, in that roller coaster phase. They never make it to the next phase because they start to feel good, physical therapy discharges them, their physician tells them they don't need to continue doing rehab, and then they go plummeting back down. But the people who get out of this phase, next one is called the tentative phase. Tentative. Because they're able to start doing their normal activities again. They're able to start getting back on the water, start cooking, start lifting their kids. But they're not seeing big improvements in their life. They're able to do the thing, but they're not getting necessarily better at it. And so we really need, during this phase, a proven plan that addresses our entire body. And we'll talk more about that in a second. The final phase is called injury-free. I'm just gonna write IF. And right now it might be if I could. And so this is where you're not even worrying about injury or pain springing up. You're competing or doing the highest level that you wanna do. Again, whether that's competitive athletics or if it's even just picking up your kids without having to worry. And that's the key thing, without having to worry. So how do we do this? Because right now, if you're like most people, you're probably stuck here or maybe here. Well, at Ben White Physiotherapy, what we like to do, we meet you, we start to get an idea of what your goals are and what you're trying to accomplish and where you're at in terms of the pyramid and your pain. And so really what we're just doing is getting a baseline. So depending on how irritable your pain is, irritable your symptoms are, we may just address pain in that visit. We might not be able to fully get into some of the other things that are driving that pain, but that is our eventual goal, is to be able to assess your entire body. Because otherwise we can't move up the pyramid. We'll stay at that roller coaster phase. The next thing we want to do once we get that baseline is start to control the pain. Pain control. It's hard to do any kind of exercise when we're hurting. And when we're hurting, it changes how we move. When we move, it changes how our brain perceives the movement, which drives us back into pain. It's kind of this vicious circle. So once we can start to control the pain, then we can mobilize. And that can mean both manual health mobilizing, you doing your own exercises and activities, but just starting to get movement back in the joints. The next thing that we would do is start to load it. So start to add a little bit of stress to the tissue that we found to be injured. When we have any kind of injury, whether it's internal or superficial, like on your arm, let's just use the arm. If you get a cut on your arm, what does it start to do? It starts to scab over, eventually starts to scar. Now, if we didn't move if I got a cut right here and I never moved my wrist again, it would get really stiff when that scar heals. So we need to start to move it so that we can get full motion and full use of our wrist back. Same thing with any injury in your body. If we never actually start to stress the tissue that was injured, it's just gonna go right back down as soon as it gets overloaded. So we need to progressively give it some pressure and some stress, otherwise it's gonna get injured again. Once we start doing that, we start to address right and left asymmetries. This is a big one where a lot of rehab professionals start to miss, is we can control the pain, we start to get you moving, we start to load it, and then we send you out of here without addressing some of the core reasons why this injury started to happen in the first place, why your movement is not as good as it could be. And oftentimes it's right and left asymmetries in our strength, in our movement ability. Those are really the big ones. And then our preference on how to move it. When we start to get here, that's when we're starting to get out of the roller coaster and into the tentative phase. And then we start to really strengthen. So not just moving, purposefully stressing the tissue just a little bit more than it can tolerate. Just enough to start to build strength. Teach your body that it's okay to start to move heavy things, to move your body in certain ways. And then that all goes good, we start to get into function-specific activities. So if it's kayaking, we start to replicate some kayaking movements with load. If it's picking up your kids, we might start to do that. If it's cooking, we might start to do that. So function specific. I'm just gonna write F, S. And then that goes okay. We're back to full function. No problems, no worries. If I could. We're back at the top. Full function. Full function. Now, does that mean you'll never have an injury again? Of course not. But it does mean you're way less likely to develop the same injury. And if we've done our job right, addressed all of these things, you're less likely to have a different injury. Because that's something that we see all the time too, is somebody was resting, they started the rehab process, their shoulder started to feel better, so they started playing basketball or doing something else, and then all of a sudden their knee starts to hurt. That's pretty common.